So whilst there's loads of different ways of teaching loose lead, there's a few things that happen that make your life harder to train loose lead. I'm going to go through a few of those exercises. The first of which is the type or length of lead that you use. So if you're looking to teach the dog loose lead, then at least give the dog a chance. And what I mean by that is if you're trying to get the dogs to walk on a loose lead and that's all you're giving them, that lead is either too short or you've wrapped it so far around the hand, then the dog has got very little room to offer the correct behaviour. What also happens is you end up really tense, really tight there. So first thing to do, make sure that you're in a safe area when you're training this so the dog can't swing out onto roads or anything like that, but get yourself a nice long lead. Preferably one that can extend if you need to put any extra distance in it as well, so you can have kind of extra links in from there. So something nice and long, because we want the dogs to have as much room to be offering the correct behavior, which in this case is just loose lead. Even if they're a bit further out in front, doesn't matter. That's all we're aiming for, loose lead, as opposed to keeping it really tight. Next tip is what you reward is more often than not what you see or what you continue to see. What gets rewarded gets repeated. So more specifically in this situation is where you reward. So if your dog's pulling on the lead and you've called them back, and then you reward, if you reward there and then start to walk, a lot of the time the dog will pull forward. And then you do the same again, reward, and then step forward, and then the dog starts to move forward again. And the reason for that is the dog is really being rewarded for just coming back to you and not actually walking with you. So what we would start to look for in these situations is that you delay the treat slightly, but give some verbal encouragement in the meantime. So as you're encouraging the dog back, oh, good boy, well done, yes. So when he turned and walked with me, that's when I put the treat in. Now it's not going to improve things dramatically immediately, but it is going to start to teach the dog that there is a slightly different position the dog now needs to be in before the reward arrives. So the next tip here is moving the dog around without trying to get them to think a little bit more for themselves. So in this situation, when a dog's distracted and you're moving in this direction, what a lot of people will do is they'll put pressure on the lead to try and either bring the dogs back, but what normally happens is instead of bringing the dogs back, they end up bringing themselves forward towards the dog, and then the dog pulls, and then they end up bringing themselves forward towards the dog. So the dog really just pulls, stops, pulls, stops, pulls, stops. Instead of just pulling them back and getting frustrated, just stop. Encourage the dog back with a little bit of a sound or a click or a smooching sound. Oh, nice work. Yes. Have the dog close, walk with them, mark, and then reward. It's a much easier way. It's going to solve a lot of stress across shoulders, arms, but more importantly, it's going to solve much more stress across the dog's body. Next tip is the equipment that you're using. So we looked at the lead already. Next bit to look at is whether you use a harness or a collar. Now, regardless of whether you think harnesses are good or bad or cause the dog to pull or help the dogs not to pull, even if your dog is a puller in the early stages, surely it's better to have extra connection on the harness than on the collar. If the dog's going to pull anyway, surely having that spread a little bit better across or a little bit more evenly across the chest is going to be better than having it spread across the collar. So my advice when you're training is to get a harness to start your training. Yes, the dog might still pull, but it's safer for the dog because you're avoiding a lot of stress and a lot of pressure around the dog's neck. Last little tip here is if you're in a rush or you can't really be bothered to do much training or you just want to get to the field and let the dogs off, then this is a bit of a kind of a cheat and a bit of a compromise. All we're going to do is keep the dog hanging behind us, waiting for the food to drop. So you're going to aim to put a first piece of food out and that drops just behind you, and then you take a step forward. Once the dog's found that piece of food and strays forward, you drop another piece down and you step forward. Drop another piece down, step forward. And all you're doing there is letting the dogs catch you up and placing the food down. If you need to or want to, yes, you can even mark the behavior when the dog catches you up. Yes. 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 So that one's a little bit of a cheat, just in case you need to get somewhere quick and you need to kind of hold the dogs back. Usually the first 5 to 10 minutes out on a walk is pretty vibrant anyway, so that would be a good option to put in there.